Oh, I can hear it. Sure. Yeah.
All right, welcome to Let Freedom Ring. We're starting off here as you can see, we're in different times right now. I have my guest Jesse Martineau, the host of the French Canadian Legacy podcast. Welcome, Jesse, to Let Freedom Ring.
Yeah. Now, are we allowed to say this is our second crack at it? Is that okay?
Yeah. So just so the viewers at home understand, we tried this yesterday. We did a pretty good interview. However, learning in these strange times that we're in, there was no audio.
Yeah.
And the iPhone can giveth and taketh away, apparently. But Jesse, I'm glad that you were able to make the time to do this again today.
No problem at all, sir. I just wanted to make sure people understood. If I come off with the impression that I know the questions that are coming, it's because I know the questions that are coming.
Very true, very true. And I'm wearing the Quebec Montreal Expos-esque Fisher Cats jersey along with my Expos hat, as you know, we both are big into French culture. Jesse a lot more than I am, obviously has his own show.
I do.
And we'll get into that. And but first, Jesse, let's get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
I know this, but the viewers at home don't. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Okay, so I'm from Manchester. I spent my entire youth growing up here in the city. I actually did the entire Catholic school thing. So St. Anthony's, St. Joe's, Trinity High School is my background.
All right, awesome. Now, where do you live now?
Still there. It's funny. I've probably spent, if I were to do the math, as much time outside of New Hampshire than in New Hampshire since I've turned 18. But do always end up back in Manchester, and I assume I probably always will. So I am back in Manchester now.
All right, awesome. And what is one thing everybody should know about you? But if there's multiple things, please feel free to tell us that too.
Sure. Yeah. And what I was saying yesterday, I think a fact that some don't know about me is that I used to be a licensed casino dealer, which was very fun. I was once a professional wrestling referee, which was cool. And one thing I didn't even mention yesterday, I used to broadcast Bowie Bay Sox AA baseball, which was a fun time.
No, really? I did not. Okay, I did not know that. Yes. I did know about the referee in the casino, but
maybe because I mentioned him yesterday. Yes.
Yeah. May have known that even before, but fair enough. No, that's interesting. Now, and the referee gig that you did, how many? Yes. Was that multiple appearances? One, two?
It wasn't supposed to happen at all. I was part of this organization in D.C. And this indie promotion. It's a really small indie promotion. And they had exactly one referee. He did every match. He showed up. He had like the earpiece so he could talk to somebody in the back. I have no idea. I was involved because I did the ring announcing. That's what I was there for. On the way to this one event, I still remember where it was. It was at the Boys and Girls Club in Georgetown.
Wow.
So at the way this one referee got in a car accident. So he was not able to make the show. And so the owner went up to me and told me, he's like, okay, you have to ref today. And I was like, I have no idea what I'd be doing at all. He's like, I don't care. You're reffing today. And that's how it ended up happening. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, did you know the finish going into it, or?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I was completely terrified the entire time. But between every match, I would run to the back, speak with whoever two were going to be coming next, and they would kind of give me a heads up. And there was also, when it was time to end, there was a signal that they would give me in the ring as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, our next question, the show does focus, it is Let Freedom Ring, so we do focus on being Americans here.
Sure.
What do you love most about being an American, and what does being an American mean to you?
Okay. Two separate questions. I think love most, and I noted that I don't think there's anything wrong with answering all the freedoms. I just think sometimes it comes off like we're the only ones who have all these freedoms, where a lot of I think some of my friends now that I have in Quebec would be like, hey, yeah, I realize we have all those too. I think something that does make us super unique is that something that was never lost on me when I was living in DC is that regardless of whether the rest of the world loves us, does not like us, they can't ignore us. That is something that is, I think, very unique to the United States. Well, not unique to the United States because there's other countries like that, but something particularly special about the United States. We have a pretty huge influence on a whole lot of things, and it's not just like the political world, but it's like it's pop culture, it's sports, it's just a major footprint on just about everything. Comes out of the United States. As far as what it means to be an American, I think right now it means a lot more than just waving a flag. I think being an American or voting, I think or enjoying the freedoms. I think being an American, especially now, comes with obligations, and I think right now we have an obligation to take care of each other and make smart decisions, knowing that some of the decisions we make now could impact far more people than just us.
No, I like that answer. I think right now, especially with everything going on with COVID-19, we do need to really come together and work together if we are going to get through this. And that means making the sacrifices that I think a lot of us are making right now. We're not in a studio. We're doing this from home.
Yes.
Which kind of brings me to what I don't want to spend a huge time on the show talking about, which is the coronavirus, but there's no way of getting around it. Right now, what's your take on everything happening? But what's up with you right now, and how has it changed your life and things like that?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me, I was actually, you mentioned I do a podcast, French Canadian themed podcast. I was actually supposed to head up to Quebec for 6 months, less than a week from now, to learn the language, to learn French. Something I've been looking forward to for, I don't know, almost the better part of 2 decades at least. So a couple of weeks away, and that got shut down. But I'm just instead hanging out here in my apartment for the foreseeable future. And while that is a giant bummer, it is definitely absolutely not lost on me that people like myself and yourself are super fortunate that we have a job that we can do from home. We're not worrying about whether our next paycheck's coming from or what we can do for work. We have that available to us. So, yes, bumming that I won't be able to make that trip, but the big picture, I think I'm still doing just fine.
No, I have to agree with that. I know that was a big dream of yours, and it's heartbreaking that this is happening, but it is for the better good.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit though about your podcast, the French Canadian Legacy Podcast? I know that it's become big. It's not just here, but in Quebec. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. The French Canadian Legacy Podcast. I started the project a little over a year ago with a good friend of mine, Mike Campbell. Mike does all the production, all the social media, all that stuff. But what we do is we try to discuss or explore the past, present, and future of the French Canadian cultural identity, primarily in New England, but we talk about other regions as well. Basically, how did we get to where we are? What does the Franco-American identity look like today? What will it look like for the next generation? And we do this through a ton of interviews, frankly. We've talked to writers, historians, authors, musicians, poets, politicians, playwrights, filmmakers, all kinds of different people, museum directors. I think the last person I interviewed, won't air for a while, he teaches, professor is what I was looking for. He's a professor at the University of Cambridge in England. So we've had a pretty good amount of people that we've been able to reach with this, as you mentioned. It's just been really, really fun. Like when we started, I thought that we might have a few from New England who might tune in, but the fact that we've gotten the feedback that we have and the numbers that we have from Quebec has been really awesome for us, for sure.
Yeah, that's really incredible. You guys really did take off with that, and I think that's wonderful. I know there was talk of maybe a documentary, maybe at some point or something.
That's one of the many things that's been put on hold right now.
I understand, but hopefully that is something that can come back.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, but I think you guys are doing a wonderful thing, and I think it's been great to see the progression of the podcast.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
With that being said, let's talk some pop culture. And we kind of, it's tough because we did this show before and now we're trying to, get back into it. But what are some of your favorite movies, Jesse?
Okay. I think my favorite movie is Glory, which we've talked about. Obviously, we talked about all this, but I don't even know why I'm repeating that. Which is what we talked about. We talked about all this.
I'm gonna try to take some of the same takes I had yesterday.
I'm going to answer this the exact same way because it's still true. So Glory is my favorite movie. Denzel is absolutely amazing in that movie. Morgan Freeman, Matthew Broderick, just an amazing movie. So big fan of that. But also there's a bunch of comedies that I like very, very much. I think first of Ghostbusters. I was a huge fan of Ghostbusters when I was a kid. Major League. It's probably my favorite sports movie. Big fan of Monty Python, The Holy Grail. That's a big one for sure.
Yeah, I love Glory. I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I think that's what put Denzel kind of on the map.
I think it did. Now, what's yours? Did you ever answer what your favorite movie was?
I did in my all-time favorite movie. If I really had to break it down, what's the all-time favorite movie that I enjoy?
Yes.
And it sounds like so people are going to be like, well, that's okay.
All right.
I think it's probably Goodfellas.
Okay.
I could watch that movie over and over and over again and never really get sick of it.
Sure.
I guess that might be my all-time favorite movie, and it's hard for me to think about that, but probably is. Yeah. I do love Malcolm X that Denzel was in, but I love the baseball movies. Bull Durham, any real baseball movies. And I did talk about this a little bit yesterday. I love the It movie, the original, and now the remakes. I do love horror movies. I don't really even put It in that category. I think it's more of I don't know if you'd call it a thriller, but like the story is just so good. Yeah. But I finally decided that I was going to read the whole book, and especially with this, being inside all the time.
You got time on your hands, sure.
And what I found was, no, I hate reading. I mean, I don't, especially like a novel like that. And so what I did was I did get the audiobook, and I've been listening to that piece by piece.
There you go.
So I will get through that and know what the original story is.
Perfect.
Now, talked about this, but what are some of your favorite independent wrestling companies?
You didn't want to ask me about my TV show this time?
That's still on the agenda.
Okay.
We're still there.
Let's pop culture part 2. All right. So
we're spacing it out.
Sure. That's your show, man. So obviously I have access to more independent wrestling companies now than ever before, thanks to a lot of new stuff being on the internet, which is really, really cool. But the two, obviously I have to mention the two we've got with Chaotic being the first, for sure, that kind of introduced me to indie wrestling. And then Limitless up in Maine. They're doing the atmosphere of those shows is completely nuts.
I mean, we've been to Limitless a couple times, and it's unbelievable the amount of people that they're drawing there. Maine, I mean, they own Maine right now. Chaotic, obviously, I have to agree with that. Love Chaotic. I am hoping big time for all these companies to be able to bounce back.
Sure.
From this. I did see some unfortunate things said by Braun Strowman on Twitter. I don't know. Did you see this?
I did not.
Criticizing independent wrestling people for saying that, they're struggling for money right now. And he said, well, I changed my career and went from the strongman competitions, not making any money, to WWE. I had to make a change. There's a pandemic going on, Braun.
Yeah. What is he? I don't understand. Yeah, I have no idea what he's getting at there. I'd like to offer him a few opportunity for follow-up questions, but yeah, you're right. Indie wrestling, you hear about it, unfortunately. A lot of these companies, as it turns out, I have no idea what the indie business model is, but it's being reported that a lot of these companies run in the red all year long until they get to WrestleMania. And that weekend, they throw on a bunch of shows, sell a bunch of tickets, and the revenue that they generate from that WrestleMania weekend is enough to put them in the black for the year. And a lot of them now are in big time trouble now that they don't have that weekend.
Yeah, no, it's heartbreaking, and like I was saying, with the local businesses yesterday, I went to the Nashville Garden.
Right.
I dropped $90 there. I bought a T-shirt. I bought 2 sandwiches, 5 IPAs, tipped, $25, whatever it was. We all got to really come together there and support. And it's hard with the independent wrestling companies. I don't really know how we can help them out, but hopefully.
What you can do, and what has been encouraged on the internet, which I support big time, if you ever in your entire life thought about buying a wrestling T-shirt, this is the time to do it. Because it's not just obviously the companies are struggling, but a lot of these wrestlers are going to be struggling as well. That they're not going to be able to have that opportunity to perform. So if you ever wanted a wrestling T-shirt, go out, buy 1, 2, 3 of your favorite indie wrestlers, because that's what's needed right now for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, both of us have already. I mean, we buy a lot of shirts, but I think you're right. If you've never bought one before, now is your time to do it. Which kind of brings me to the next point. Your top 5 wrestlers from New England, but you can't count Cena or Triple H.
Okay.
The guys that have made it to WWE or Ring of Honor, I should say.
Right. And to be fair, I left out everybody that we had seen in person.
Okay.
Though I completely understand why you included that. In the first, well, I should say I've seen some of these in person, just not through the indies. But the first I mentioned, of course, is Matt Taven, because he's your favorite wrestler of all time.
He's a Melvin. Complete Melvin.
I think he amuses me to no end. I think he's hilarious. Obviously, Sasha Banks is incredibly talented. Hopefully she can stay injury-free, because then she'll be on top for a long time. I thought Damien Sandow, that character was absolutely hilarious. Damien Sandow. What are we doing? Okay.
Boss time, baby.
Boss days. My fault. I should have known that was coming. You didn't do that yesterday. No, you're just
you know what? I forgot I had these. I bought them at WrestleMania last year, so. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Damien Sandow, that character, I thought was absolutely hilarious.
I agree.
I don't really understand how he never took off in the WWE, considering he knocked out of the park absolutely everything that they gave him to do, including being a stunt double of The Miz, which seems incredibly silly.
One of the best things I've ever seen.
He was amazing at it. Like, everything he did, he absolutely nailed, so I don't know how he didn't succeed there. I had to include somebody from ECW, because I was a giant ECW fan, especially in high school. And so Justin Credible, who's a big part of that, is going to make my list. And we talked about wrestling in Maine. There's a pretty good wrestling culture in Maine, so I had to include somebody from Maine on my 5th. And I kind of went back and forth, so I cheated by listing both Fandango and Scotty 2 Hotty.
All right. Johnny Curtis I think is what he went around here, right? Was he going by that name? Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. No, that's a good group. I had in mind, obviously, Todd Hansen.
Yeah.
Got to see his career quite a bit in Chaotic and locally. And then when he finally got signed, knowing that he had that surgery and everything like that, right. Unbelievable comeback. Donovan Dijak, obviously, was very happy to see him make it. I remember going to a Chaotic Wrestling show at the Lowell PAV, and he was one of the guys getting me a chair within months later, he's on the show, and you could just tell this guy had this athletic ability that most people didn't have. Yeah. Obviously, Tommaso Ciampa, I mean, he's at the top of his game as far as NXT is concerned. I think he's helped make that brand to be as good as it is.
Yep.
And yeah, I got to put on Sasha Banks. Obviously, I got the glasses.
You do.
But then I also count Brian Malonis getting signed with Ring of Honor as someone that kind of did make it. As critical as Mr. Malonis has been of me being a Patriots fan on his podcast that is no longer going anymore, the wrestling podcast about nothing. I am a big fan of the Kingpin Brian Malonis. So I
did want to include one thing that I didn't bring up yesterday, but now that you mentioned Dijak, I think is kind of fun. I was actually in the ECW arena when he was in the Top Prospects tournament for Ring of Honor.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that was fun. That was obviously in Philadelphia, the ECW arena.
It's another one we're kind of leaving off, but I don't think of him as like a New England wrestler because I didn't see him wrestling there. But Kofi Kingston,
sure, Yeah,
he's definitely up there.
No question.
I just don't think of him because we weren't really following it then. But Kofi winning the title at Mania was unbelievable.
That was enormous. Absolutely.
Pretty sure I high-fived everybody in my section, whether they wanted to or not.
I have no doubt about that.
Yeah. So, but that does take me because we're both big wrestling fans. We'll just touch on one more thing, kind of wrestling.
People are getting the gist of that from this conversation.
Yeah, I could I could see that. And we know that that WrestleMania is gonna be in the Performance Center, empty crowd. If that even does happen, by the time this even gets posted, someone in WWE could get the coronavirus, and maybe it doesn't happen.
Who knows?
But who are some of your top 5 indie wrestlers New England right now?
Okay, indie wrestlers. So the top of my list is going to be Brian Fury, and he was before. He was the guy who owned Chaotic Wrestling. If you recall, prior to his first retirement match, it's kind of funny that you can say first retirement match at this point. But prior to his,
there'll probably be another one.
Yeah, I hope so. But so prior to that, I used to come to all the events with my New Hampshire flag. So I thought that was pretty awesome, and watching him work is great. I think it's semi-cheating and super easy to list Anthony Green, but I would be lying if I didn't say he isn't one of my favorites. And there you go. Now you can go.
We got so many shades right now. Anthony Green.
Perfect. And similar to your Dijak story, my Anthony Green story is the very first indie wrestling show I ever went to. Anthony Green sold me my popcorn, which I think is kind of fun. When he's big time, I'm going to tell us for a long time. And I think Chase Del Monte is absolutely hilarious. I can watch him all the time. I think he's very, very funny. Brian Malonis is somebody you mentioned, and I went back and forth of whether or not to include him because he's kind of already in the Already Made It group because of his work in Ring of Honor, which is very cool. And then the one I think is super, super underrated, and I think is Triplicious. I think his in-ring work is really good, and he is absolutely when he started calling people in the stands basics, I thought that was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen at an indie event. So big fan of him. And my one addition I'm going to throw on in case Malonis doesn't count because he's already made it as I wrote DL Hurst because seeing him come through has been really, really fun as well. Yeah, Big Koozie. I got I got one as well. I got two DL shirts.
I can't put it in this mug, but can you take me serious right now with these glasses on?
I'm not sure I can without the glasses.
Or I agree with you. Anthony Green, big fan of his. He went live on Facebook the other day. As I'm a big wrestling figure collector, I asked if he had nails, which was pretty much the last one I'm probably going to buy. I think I'm done, especially with all this. But Christian Casanova, big fan of Christian Casanova. Definitely a big fan of DL Hurst. Logan Brothers, Chase Del Monte. One we didn't really mention, but because he's not near type made it category, but he's pretty big to a lot of people. A lot of people know who he is, and that's the Thrill Ride Jimmy Preston too.
Now, very well that when I get frustrated, bored sometimes in the office, I'll throw on about 7 consecutive hours of Jimmy Preston work, and it's amazing.
Yeah, he really had something there. The Absolute Savage thing was probably one of the most popular things in the summer of 2014 that I can remember. And he's still making some videos too. Yeah,
and the one thing that way he doesn't make it for me was just because I was not around when he was consistently wrestling in organizations that I go to. That's all.
Yeah. No, I get it. And he's not really, I don't know if he's full-time or not.
Right.
But I would just say he's one of my, maybe not. Yeah. Maybe not like current, but all time.
Agreed.
So yeah, no, that's a good list. Did you have a chance to watch the Chris Benoit Vice documentary yet so far?
Not. No.
Just touching upon it. If you do have a chance to watch it, they're at part 1. It's heartbreaking just watching that.
Yeah.
I was such a big fan of not only Chris Benoit, but I was such a big fan of Eddie Guerrero as well. And it does break down, Eddie's passing and really the impact it had on Chris Benoit. No excuse for what he did. Obviously, he had some issues. I think CTE played a big role, but it's unreal. I think you should watch it. Jericho's in it. Vicky Guerrero's in it. Chavo Guerrero's in it. Dean Malenko's in it. And they're giving their real what happened during that time.
Sure. No, yes, I only saw about the first because I didn't even realize it was available to everybody until you sent it to me right before we started filming this. So I'm only about 10, 15 minutes in, but obviously JR is involved as well. So there's a bunch of people in it.
And his son David does some, he's been doing a lot of interviews.
Yeah, he opens the show.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to shape how people believe anything or not, but yeah, what a tragedy. And even to this day, it kind of still stings because I was a huge Chris Benoit fan.
Understandable.
So, but we can talk about that on another time. That is a sad thing. We want to keep people happy. So, let's move on to sports. XFL has decided they are closing operations for the rest of the season. We kind of knew that was coming.
Yes.
Who did you think was going to win the XFL this year?
Now, I did think Houston was probably going to win because I thought they had the best quarterback play. We saw a lot of pretty inconsistent quarterback play in the XFL. But yeah, it is definitely a bummer. But you can say that you were at the game where the world learned about the beer snake. And that's what's really fun.
The beer snake was fantastic. This is only 2 weeks ago. And we knew about the coronavirus there. I didn't realize it was going to get to the level it was. Sure. Looking back, probably wasn't the smartest thing to do in times like this.
Sure.
Now, a year ago, the beer snake would have been one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
I mean, at the time, I still did think it was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I was on the other side of the stadium, so I could see what was kind of going on, but I didn't really understand it till the end of the game. But what I could say at Audi Field and the XFL in general, it ain't like going to Gillette. You were allowed to do whatever the heck you wanted. I basically could have walked on the field if I wanted to. So it was fantastic. I think you're right. You think the Roughnecks would have eventually won it?
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I just hope there's a season 2. That's the big thing.
I think there is. I think he has enough money to do it. And I also think that quarterback from the Roughnecks, PJ something, I want to say. Don't quote us on the show. We had another day to actually look that name up.
Neither of us did.
And still didn't do it. However, I think he's going to get signed by the NFL.
Yeah, very possible. Sure.
All right. Now here's this part of the show. Has to be talked about. Don't want to talk about it. Want to pretend like it never happened. Okay. Tom Brady signed with Tampa.
Okay, Tom Brady did sign with Tampa.
How are you feeling about it? What do you think?
Yeah, like I was saying, I think it's one of those where I should have known it was coming. I did know it was coming. I watched this, I listened to Sports Talk Radio, paying attention to what's happening. All the signs were there that he's definitely going to be gone. Yet, when it finally happened, it still kind of surprised me. And it shouldn't have, but it did. Because I just thought somehow, some way, despite reports, Crafty Bob would step up and make sure Tommy didn't go anywhere. So it was surprising, especially to end up on that team. Never would have guessed if he would have gone anywhere that he would go to Tampa, a franchise that's really, really bad for a long time. I mean, they won the one title, but the vast majority of their existence, they've been terrible. So, yeah, I was surprised. That's where it ended up for sure.
That was the first team to not win the game in a season. I think it was their first year. Even the Super Bowl they won, they took the coach. They took Gruden from the Raiders. He knew everything in that Super Bowl that was coming. But yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow, but I understand why he did it.
Oh, I understand both sides. Sure.
He has everything he could ever want. Now he's going to be one of the higher paid quarterbacks. And I think he wants to play till he's 45. I legit think he believes that.
I hope he does.
Or maybe even more. So yeah, good luck to Tom Brady. You left us at a time though. Out of all the times to leave, Tom.
You didn't like the fact that he took off on St. Patrick's Day?
St. Patrick's Day, the bars are closed.
Right.
we're stuck in because of this virus. Tom, good luck to you, sir. I love you like a person that I've never met before as much as I could possibly love. That brings us to this year, which 2020 kind of started not so great, I guess. We lost Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Kobe Bryant moment?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a single moment. I was never a giant Kobe guy. I didn't really. I mean, obviously, I'm biased against just because of being a really big Celtics fan. But in addition to that, I didn't really like how the breakup between him and Shaq went down. It seemed to me that they could have won a whole lot of titles if those two had agreed to get along and stay together. And I would think that you would rather be the 1A on a team with more titles than the number one alpha on a team with less. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but so it did surprise. So I was never a giant fan, obviously. But it's the one thing I think it was a Larry Bird quote, who said that he was comparing Kobe and LeBron, and he said something along the lines of somebody asked who he would rather play with. He said if I was looking to have fun, I'd play with LeBron. If I was looking to win, I'd play with Kobe. And I thought that was pretty high praise.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think too with the Kobe, and I think we've touched upon this a little bit, but with the Kobe Shaq split, 2004 was not a great year for them. Kobe had all that other stuff going on. We don't want to talk too much into it. They brought in Gary Payton. They brought in Karl Malone. They still couldn't win the championship. And do I have it wrong? Did Shaq leave in 05 or 06? Was he 2 years into the Heat?
Not very good with years. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I'm guessing it was after the 05, and then Shaq hooked up with Dwayne Wade, who was was he a rookie? I don't even remember.
He had been around. He was a star already at that point.
Okay, so yeah, that's a tough part of the Kobe legacy. But what I will say about Kobe, he was able to bounce back after Shaq and win 2 more championships. So
yeah.
Oh
yeah. Really talented guy. I just think he had a pretty decent chance of winning more than 2 more if he had stuck around with Shaq, but that's not what happened.
Yeah, well, no, I do think Kobe was a winner. He had that killer instinct. He will be missed by everyone.
Sure.
Who do you think was going? I don't think the NBA. Now people are saying maybe they'll have the NBA finals in August.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be against that. I would love that. If you can get them in there, like right now, you can't even do empty arenas with them because the players have it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a problem,
Sure.
Who do you think was on their way to win the NBA?
Yeah, it doesn't excite me to say this. Again, being a Celtics guy, but I don't think anybody in the league was playing better than your boy LeBron at this point. So, and obviously with Anthony
Davis. I'm a Celtics fan for people that,
Yeah, I know. Celtics and Bills. I watched the show with Bobby.
God.
But yeah, I think for those, I mean, who were watching the Lakers, I thought their supporting cast was playing well enough. Plus those 2 absolute studs, I thought they were going to be likely to win, which did not excite me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. My buddy Mike Schultz had been saying he thought it was going to be a Celtics Lakers finals, which would have been unbelievable. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Anytime you can give it those teams in the finals, it's magic.
Actually,
no pun intended.
Really fun jump in with that. All right, so the last time those 2 teams, and I even mentioned this on the pre-recording yesterday, the last time those 2 teams were in the finals, I was in law school. I was doing an internship that had me watch a murder trial. This was in Salem. Yeah. I had to watch a murder trial in Salem, Mass, and take notes and bring them back to the office and let the attorneys know kind of what was happening because there was like a co-defendant involved in a different trial. And so one of the days, and this was during a Celtics Lakers finals, one of those days, the entire proceedings had to be held up because one of the jurors, who was clearly a college kid, came in wearing a Garnett jersey, super hungover to the point where even while they were giving testimony, this dude did not sit in his chair. He stood behind the chair in the jury box. just kind of hands on knees, looking like he was about to die.
Totally
now, this
hungover.
is a dude who's because he's so hungover. And this is a guy who's about to determine guilt or innocence in a murder trial. That was my experience with that.
That's pretty unreal, but it's hard to blame him.
It was so crazy.
You know, how much fun was that run in 08, the Big Three?
Sure.
You know, awesome. And we've talked about this on the show before. People still don't forgive Ray Allen for leaving. I thought it was over. The run was over. I guess I'll ask that question. How do you feel about Ray Allen today in 2020?
Right. What I just watching like I think it was NBC Sports Boston did a pretty good like kind of documentary on that team, which I thought was really interesting. And seemingly Ray was always his own guy right from the very beginning. He never really was one of the guys. He's kind of always just like personality wise kept himself separate from everybody else. But I do think that when somebody leaves for a rival and takes less money to leave than they could have taken to stay, that's always going to rub you the wrong way. So I think that's understandable that people would be annoyed, especially those who played with him.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Ray Allen fan. I mean, I love Jesus Shuttlesworth. That's another movie I should have put in. He Got Game. I love that movie.
There you go.
I was mad, especially because I know that everybody thinks I'm this LeBron defender, which I guess I am.
You are big time.
I hated LeBron when he played for the Heat. I absolutely despised LeBron when he played for the Heat. Even though I had that bobblehead, which has now been destroyed, dropped the bag. We'll get into that another time.
That's a great
But when Ray went to the Heat, I was like, wow, what a traitor. And
I can understand why people are still mad, sure.
But I am over it, and I will wear my Ray Allen jersey proudly. So, all right, next question. Favorite Red Sox moment? Can't count the 04 World Series.
Yes, and that's a good thing you put in that can't count the 04 series because, as I mentioned yesterday, I still can name all 25 members of that World Series roster, which is
impressive. I can name a bunch, but I probably couldn't name the whole roster.
Mike Myers, Curtis Laskanik,
Pokey Reese. Those are names.
Those are some of the ones people forget.
Yes, I had a Pokey Reese t-shirt.
There you
True
go.
Story. Yeah.
That's awesome. But I think my favorite is actually something that you were at, which was when following the Boston Marathon bombing, David Ortiz grabbed the microphone and addressed the crowd. That's probably my favorite Sox not 04 moment.
Yeah, that was pretty unbelievable. That's my favorite moment ever being actually at a game.
Sure.
Was, Ortiz saying that. And we're living in shocking times right now. None of us ever, I guess we probably knew a pandemic could happen before, right? But I never really thought it was going to.
Theoretically, right?
I never thought that 9/11 is something that could possibly happen. But the Boston Marathon bombings was something that hit more home than anything probably. I wouldn't say over 9/11 or anything like that. But for someone that lives in this area, and how much the marathon means to us, because I wake up early to start watching the marathon because I go into work later, and I start watching it, and I'm really curious to who wins on Marathon Monday. And it's such a great time for Boston. For someone to actually attack that, never thought I'd see that.
Yeah, no, and I think what made that one kind of land home for a lot of people was because lots of us knew people who were either running in it or around the finish line to watch because they knew somebody running in it. So I think we all had some side of connection to somebody who was either in the events or there watching the event. So that made it more personal, I think.
100%. And Boston strong. And that roster, that Red Sox team, had no business winning the World Series.
They were not expected to, that's for sure. That was not supposed to be a competitive team going into that year. No,
it went from Bobby Valentine.
Yeah,
who I thought I thought he had destroyed that was it. I was like, the team's fighting. Pedroia's calling him out on social media at the time.
Yeah.
They ran Euclid out of town, I believe, at the time, and it was just kind of like,
Traded mid-game. That's pretty fun. Yeah.
is that what happened with him?
I think so.
Yeah, and he went on to marry Tom Brady's sister, I believe. But yeah, 2013. What a year! What a year!
Yeah.
Boston strong, and that was an unbelievable time.
It was. Yeah, that was a crazy run. Yeah.
It was like it starts off really bad. They picked up the city, and the city went on.
It's like that's like a movie script. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. Well, Wahlberg already did it.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Well, right. But the tragic event that ends with a unexpected team championship.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is a part they left off. What was it, the Patriot Day or something?
Did not see
it. I wish they made it later. It just seemed too soon. That's just me. What's your favorite Super Bowl, not counting any of the Patriot ones?
And I think this is going to be surprising to a lot of people. And then unfortunately, I think Brian Malonis might like the answer. And that is going to be Super Bowl 40 XL. And that was for a very, very personal reason. That was when the Steelers won that championship. And for me, that was because when I was growing up, and he still is to this day, my dad is a giant Notre Dame football fan. Like, he will read anything about the Notre Dame football team. He'll watch any spring video spring ball video is what I was trying to say, that he can get his hands on. There you go. Get your Notre Dame jersey. But yeah, so Dad being a huge fan, one of the very first college football players I remember being really, really into was Jerome Bettis. So seeing him play at Notre Dame, and then I was obviously following him all the way through when he was drafted in his career. So to see Jerome Bettis end his career, retire in his hometown, literally holding the Lombardi Trophy, announcing his retirement in his hometown, I thought, as somebody who'd followed him since he was like 19 years old, I thought that was really cool.
No, that is awesome. As a big Notre, probably not as diehard as your dad. He sounds like the most diehard Notre Dame fan, which I love to hear that. Yeah, I love Notre Dame football. Obviously, Jerome Bettis being a Steeler, tough for me later.
Fair.
But I agree with that. My favorite Super Bowl outside of it, Colts and Saints. And I think we talked about this yesterday. And before we had to re-record, we're
gonna say that for every. I can't even help myself. I'm doing it all the time too.
Yeah. It feels like deja vu. But actually, this quality looks a lot better than it did on the iPhone. So, I will say that onside kick was the ballsiest thing I'd ever seen. And Sean Payton, guts.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolute guts.
It'll be remembered for that forever. Can you imagine what a giant donkey he would look like if that didn't work? How much he would have been smoked? He would have looked so dumb. But the fact that he pulled it off, that was amazing.
Yeah, no, that was great. And at the time, I really despised Peyton Manning so much and didn't want him winning any more Super Bowls. Now I'm not so much. It's over, but that was great. It was good to see New Orleans win that Super Bowl. So for me, that was my favorite in 2010-09 season, so. All right, cool. Let's go into politics. We don't want, we're not going to go too deep into it because we don't want to be too divided right now. We need to be united as much as we can. But were you surprised by Biden's comeback? I thought it was Bernie's year, or
Yes, I was actually, especially coming out of the first two states, and Bernie seemed to have all the momentum in the world. It didn't look like it was going to slow down anytime soon. So the fact that everybody else, because I think the Bernie crowd is probably going to be Bernie crowd regardless of who else is involved in the vote in the race. I think the fact that everybody else seemed to get out of the way to let Biden be the alternative to Bernie, that happens a lot earlier than I thought it would happen. So I was pretty surprised. So yes, to answer your question, I am. I mean, can you imagine what would have happened 4 years ago if the Republicans had done that? If they had just kind of picked one to be the not Trump alternative, and literally everybody else got out of the way and just kind of let that other guy be the man. That guy would probably be president right now, whoever that would be. But yeah, so I was surprised at how it went down.
Yeah, I think what we learned a lot is that Bernie has a lot of supporters.
Sure.
A lot of the youth really likes Bernie.
Yes.
But doesn't sound like they show up for primaries.
They didn't come out in big enough numbers, that's for sure. Yeah.
So that's tough. I mean, Bernie was the most consistent. He's been consistent his whole life on what he believes. Yeah, I don't know. I just hope that the Bernie supporters continue to not do what they did last election and decide to just sit it out. You should still get out there and vote and be a part of the process. But it's unfortunate. But I think he could help Biden too if they decide to kind of come together at some point.
And for me, I have no idea because obviously we've never had an election season in the middle of a giant crazy virus outbreak.
So, not in our lifetime.
Yes. So I really don't know how this is going to play out. I have no idea. So it is going to be interesting to follow at this point.
Yeah, no, definitely will see how it plays out. And what gets me is that whether it's Trump or Biden, when are we going to get some youth going for the, you know what I mean?
Not this time.
Definitely not. Now I want to touch base on something that you corrected me on. A little bit historical. It's political because we're, but I had said that Jefferson and Adams on an episode were not talking at the time, the 50 years where they both, after the Declaration of Independence was signed,
right.
They both died on the same day.
They did.
And I had said that they weren't talking at that point, but you say that's not entirely accurate.
No, they had stopped talking for a long time. They had major beef. Obviously, two very, very different ideas of what's happening in this world, or the way the direction the country should take from a political perspective. But so they had stopped talking. And for anybody who thinks that this division that we have in politics is something recent, that is completely false. Because at the time of that election, Jefferson and Adams, they each had their own newspapers that had their own reporters that told the stories that they wanted to tell. One of the things that is crazy is that a Jefferson paper once reported that Adams was a hermaphrodite, which is an amazing story.
Can you believe that back then?
Yes. But so obviously they didn't talk for a long time, but towards the end of their lives, somebody, I forgot who it was, somebody brokered the peace between them, and they actually exchanged a ton of letters back and forth towards the end. So they were actually, it was very polite kind of remembrance of what they had done together, and appreciation of what they had done together. So it was actually very, very super cordial towards the end. And the word is, you can see it posted a lot of places, that the last things Adams ever said was his final words were Thomas Jefferson survives. And of course, nobody really knows if that's actually true or just added to the story afterwards. But it turns out he was wrong, because Jefferson had died 5 hours earlier. But yeah, so they did actually have a pretty good relationship towards the end.
No, that's good. Yeah, I think I knew that was kind of true. And I definitely, anytime I say something on the show, anybody feels free, if it's not entirely accurate, to let me know, because I want the facts to be the facts. But that being said about the division, we literally had Aaron Burr shoot Alexander Hamilton. They had a duel. Right. I think we're past those points, and this is at the beginning of the country, so we've always been divided on things.
Correct.
Which kind of brings me to the next point: coronavirus. Can we come together as a nation? Can we sit on our couches and do what we're asked to do?
I hope so. The answer is I'm not sure, but I do really hope so. I think obviously this is going to be a major, major challenge for a lot of people. I'm not going to be super excited to stay in my apartment, not be in the presence. I live by myself, so not be in the physical presence of another human being for many weeks at a time is not something that gets me super excited. But I do hope, because I think the preventative measures, one thing that we would see is that if the preventative measures taken actually work, it will appear as though the government leaders at every level, that the government leaders overreacted. And what I hope happens is that all of us be willing to look like we overreacted.
Yeah.
So I think that's the best
agree.
way to prevent this from getting as bad as we're seeing, say, in Italy.
No, I agree with that. And yeah, I think we should overreact and just do the things that we need to do. And we got to, I want to see the best Donald Trump that we can possibly get out of him. The other day he's arguing with a reporter about people are nervous and they're scared. What would you tell them? And and the president turned it on him. Said, I would tell them you're a horrible reporter. And Pence was able to answer that question. I just hope, because I don't want to get into this divide, because I'm not going to sit here and just bash Donald Trump, because it's not going to do any good.
Right.
The diehard Trump supporters are still Americans. We still love them as our own. We're one country. But we need the best Donald Trump that we can get out of him.
I mean, I think it's
right now
just factually accurate to say we are all in this together.
Yeah.
So everything we do now is going to impact the rest of us. And of course, it's true here in our communities, but in the larger communities, this is worldwide an issue for everybody. So, yeah, I think it's the time that we do listen to the CDC and make smart personal choices. I think that could make a big difference.
No, I agree. And I think we will get through this. And when it's all said and done, we want all our loved ones and the people we care about to be okay as well.
Absolutely.
So let's go to blank versus.
Fans of Let Freedom Ring. That's the most important group.
I want to make sure that Let Freedom Ring Nation is okay.
Exactly.
But let's go to my favorite segment of the show.
Yes.
Blank versus blank. I'm going to give you 2 words, maybe 2 people. You have to pick one or the other.
Okay. Yeah.
First one, Brett Favre or Peyton Manning?
I went Brett Favre. I was never a giant fan of either one. I definitely disliked Peyton Manning because I was not a fan of the Peyton versus Brady, who was better competition. Remember, for a long time, that was like a legit debate. People would argue back and forth. That was an absolute thing. So for that reason, I hated Peyton Manning. And the one thing that always amused me anyway about Favre was one way or another, you knew that guy was going to sling it. Like whether he should or shouldn't, that ball was going to be up in the air a ton. And so that made him entertaining to watch.
No, I agree. And you never knew. As a Brett Favre fan, I wasn't like a Brett Favre fan kind of nice, kind of liked him. But that game that he had with after his father passed in 2003 on Monday Night Football against the Oakland Raiders, I became a pretty big Brett Favre fan after that. So I would agree with that. Next question: Triple H or the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels?
Yeah, so I think Shawn Michaels might be, if you talk about all the things that go into being a professional wrestler on the mic and bell to bell, might be the best there ever has been. But as far as, obviously, I'm completely biased because of, I'm from New Hampshire, like Triple H is, and I'm of French-Canadian descent, as Triple H is. So obviously I'm biased toward Triple H, but I think it's going to be pretty fair to say there's going to be very, very few people in the history of the business that will have a bigger impact on what Triple H is doing right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. As a performer, I always like Shawn better. I think you had talked about this yesterday. Shawn had some definite issues in the 90s when he was young. About just kind of being a decent human being, which he is now. He's a born again Christian. But overall impact on the business, I think Triple H, like NXT is so great and he's producing these stars. I heard Matt Hardy say today that if Triple H was 100% in charge, he wouldn't have left.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, I think he said that on the Jericho podcast. So yeah, his impact is unbelievable on the business. Global. He's from my hometown.
No, true. Your high school.
Yeah, he's a Purple Panther. So next question. 2 great cities. I love them both.
Yes.
I'm rocking the Expos hat. I wish that Montreal would get baseball again. But Quebec City or Montreal?
And my answer to this, I'm going to note, was significantly different than it would have been when I was 18 years old. It would have been a very easy question when I was 18 years old. Because when you are, like I think it's like a lot of guys, when you turn 18 and you're from New England, that's the time to go head out and party in Montreal. And that town is an absolute blast. I mean, it would still be a blast now if we went out, but especially when you're 18, you're gonna have a good time being legal drinking for the first time. That was way fun. So awesome town. So I'm not trying to knock on Montreal at all. I still love Montreal for sure. And I'm not going to say that Montreal doesn't have a bunch of history, because it does. It has a ton of history in Montreal culture for sure. But for me, what I prefer now, my answer would be Quebec City, because I think that Quebec City just has a feel. Obviously, I'm trying to live there. I'm trying to get up there to Quebec City to live for 6 months. That was the plan. So hopefully I can get up to Quebec City. But anyway, I think it just has like the feel of that town. You feel like you're in Europe. The history, the culture is just, it is really amazing. Just if you just find yourself, for me, one of the more fun things to do is get up super early before the tourists come out and head down Rue de Champlain. And it's just, to me, it's like you're walking through a postcard. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great time. We went up. I went up. I know you guys had gone up years before, but I went up with you guys couple New Years ago, and I was taken away by how beautiful. What did we do? The toboggan?
We did. Yeah, the toboggan. Yeah, outside of Frontenac, yes.
Yeah, everything was incredible about that. I think I have to agree with you that at 18 years old, or I went to Montreal when I was 19, got blacked out drunk, told all the Canadians that they screwed Bret Hart. Why that made any sense to me at the time, I don't know.
I'm not sure you'd act any differently today, to be honest.
Probably not. I mean, I was making up words last time we went to Quebec City. 30 days shave of pay.
Your performance is that you showed up ready to leave wearing only a fleece. That was the best.
Yeah. I was not prepared. I didn't really think too much about. Yeah, that was a mistake. Definitely a mistake. But that city is breathtaking and it's beautiful, and I would love to get back up there again when this all does eventually work out. I would love to visit you. Hopefully, maybe Tim can get away from the kids for a little bit, and we can go up there.
And like, if I haven't said it before, obviously I am bumming that I'm not being able to make that trip. I'm losing track of what I said earlier in this interview versus what I said yesterday.
Yeah.
But if I haven't said it yet, yes, a lot of people are writing me about how awful it is I'm not able to make that trip. But how, again, just stressing, I think, because I did think I'd bring it up. How lucky are we that we are able to stay safe with our job? That's
huge. Yeah. That's huge that we are able to work from home, and we're getting used to that. But no, good point. We got to look at the bigger picture. I think this will work out for you, and I think you will end up there. It's just time. It's time to figure it out.
And still, what do you think? Because normally, you can do this program basically any 6 months. A new group comes in at the very end of each month, so you can start in any month. I chose to start at the end of March and go March through September because, having experienced the Quebec winter, I am not tough enough, I don't think, to go through a Quebec winter. So my question is, if I have the opportunity, say, to start the end of September, is that something I do, or do I wait all the way till 2021 to do it? And I'm not sure yet. I haven't answered that question for myself.
If you want my opinion,
I do. That's why. Sure.
I would just do it as soon as possible. Because what I feel like now I've learned from life is, like, it could be here one day.
Sure.
And then the next day it could just not be.
Nothing guaranteed.
So layer up. I would layer up. Don't do what I did and bring all the layers you can, and try to get that in as soon as possible. That'd be my take on it.
No, I like that.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought this would be our lives even 2 weeks ago?
No, absolutely. Speaking of, 2 weeks ago on your show, it wasn't an unrealistic take at the time. Your guest, when you were down in DC, talked about how he didn't think coronavirus was a big deal, and he didn't really understand why Italy was canceling all their sports. How different is the world now 2 weeks later?
Incredibly different. Yeah. Tim was still, he was still flying. He was on a plane every day. Yeah. Now he's not. Everything changed quick. So if you want the take from the host of Let Freedom Ring, I'd say do it ASAP.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that brings us to our next one. Two sports that I know you love, that I love too.
Yes.
rugby or football?
Sure. And I said as a player, I probably enjoyed playing football more. And I don't think that is unrelated to the fact that I was a better football player. I think that probably contributed to me liking it more. That being said, I watched both a ton. I've coached both. And I think if I was just going to watch a random game between two teams that I have no personal connection to at all, either a rugby game or a football game, I'm going to turn on the rugby game. To me, I find it more entertaining.
All right, fair enough. Yeah,
I mean,
it's a
the culture of rugby is amazing. You were involved in that. You've seen it. You played.
Oh, it's an unbelievable amount of fun. I wish that I got better at the game myself. I spent 2 years playing. I think I was a wing, who struggled to know what the plays were because the wing didn't really have to know the plays.
No.
The one thing I could always do is I could tackle,
Good.
which is why they even saw anything in me. Football, I only played for a year, which is kind of a regret of mine looking back because of how much I love football now. But the times I had at Plymouth State with rugby are just the group of guys and you go at each other on the field, and then next thing you know, you're at a drink up having a good time with the same guy you tried to take his head off.
Absolutely.
So I would pick football as more entertaining to me.
Sure.
But I do love rugby a lot. So
yeah, it's a good question.
All right. So I think I know I guess I know all your answers, but your answer to this one.
Just answer differently just to see if you catch it at some point.
Oh, we could, well, I'd love you to answer this one a little bit differently. We got Manchester or Nashua.
Oh, yeah. That was probably not going to be any differently. So obviously,
Gate City.
I'm super biased being from Manchester, but Manchester is the bigger city. You can get to 93 from Manchester. You can get to 101, runs right through Manchester. You can't do any of those things. You notice when the primary comes to town, every single giant media organization in the entire universe, and I know I walked by them right behind my house, set up headquarters, right behind where I live now, my apartment, because they want to see what's going on in Manchester. I think Manchester is the focus, so Manchester is going to be my. Not I got anything against Nashville. But I'm a Manchester guy. I've lived a number of other places, but Manchester will always be where I come back to.
And I would like to say for the record that Nashua did win #1 city twice from Money Magazine.
Sure.
Just pointing it out there. Not a big deal. No, but speaking of cities, one that you've lived in the area of, being, I guess we're not officially the Boston area, but we're not far from Boston.
We're an hour from Boston. Yeah.
It is a city that we love. But Boston or DC? You did live in DC for some time.
Yeah. So I lived in the city, in the city proper itself for I think 4 years-ish, something like that. But I lived inside the Beltway. Yeah, you've been to DC. There's like a Beltway that goes right around.
DC, yeah.
Yeah, so I lived inside the Beltway for 8.5 years. So I actually know that town better than I even know Boston because I spent a lot of time actually in that town. I've never lived in Boston. I love Boston, like you said. But I do think DC, for me, is a really awesome place. Obviously, Boston has the amazing history for sure. I'm a history guy, so the history of that place is absolutely amazing. But I think and Boston may have this too. I just don't know because I haven't lived there. But DC has like this life, this energy. You kind of feel like you're in a place that's an important place. And I think, and to me, it was really cool being there.
Yeah, no, I love DC. DC's great. Been there a bunch of times. They party hard. So does Boston. But yeah, Boston is like, you think of that as home.
Yeah.
But both.
It's crazy that, every 4 years you got a giant inaugural parade.
Yeah.
You have balls all over and this is just part of the routine of kind of what happens, in that town. Like seeing congressmen is not super unusual if you know where to look. That town. It is kind of wild for me.
It's definitely fascinating. Definitely fascinating. Speaking of not to go too far on, but we didn't really talk too much that you were also a state rep.
I was a state rep. Yeah, I did 2 terms, 2 non-consecutive terms up in Concord. That was interesting, super interesting time. You learn a ton about a lot of things for sure.
Is that something you'd ever want to do again?
Not ruling it out. Definitely not. I will say but not anytime soon. You had brought up the podcast. That takes a lot of my time.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have been able to do the podcast if I was still a state representative. So that's kind of my priority now. But certainly never say never on that. That's for sure.
All right. Now, if you had to pick Red Sox or Patriots, you only get one.
Yeah.
What are you going with?
So my answer was, and it still is, I'm going to take the Sox just because it becomes such an enormous part of what I do when I get home from work for I don't even know, from basically the beginning of April all the way through the end of September. It just becomes like a habit. You come home, turn on the Sox. And it's a perfect thing. You have said before, it's the perfect thing to have on in the background if you want to do something else around the house, or if not, you just sit there and you watch the game. And so to me, obviously those 16 plus obviously playoffs that you have, the Patriots, are obviously super exciting and really interesting. But to me, the day in, day out, coming back, coming home, watching the Sox, I would miss that tremendously. So if I had to pick, I would go with the Sox.
I have to agree with that too, because of how much I love the summer too. And sure. Baseball is such a part of the summer. And the fact is, the Red Sox are on pretty much every night, so you can at least have them on in the background. The thing with the Patriots, though, is not just the Patriots, but football owns Sundays during their season.
Oh, absolutely.
And watch, especially the Patriots in general, because we're New Englanders, we all get together with friends and family. It's an event. It's like a holiday every Sunday. Just a reason to get together with people. But I think you're right, though. I mean, I grew up on baseball before any other sport too. Sure. So I think I always appreciate that. But I mean, I guess if I had to choose, I mean, baseball's there 162 games.
Yes. Absolutely.
But I do love them both very much, and I'm glad we don't actually have to make that decision.
Yeah, because you didn't pick yesterday. You still get to chicken out of picking it again?
Oh, when we get to that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I probably won't. Yeah, you'll see. Movies or TV?
Again, I don't watch a ton of – well, I do watch a ton of television. I don't watch a ton of scripted television besides wrestling. Obviously, wrestling's scripted. But I generally come home and watch sports or wrestling every single day. So I don't watch and I did. Game of Thrones was probably the last TV show that I actually did follow.
I missed the boat on that.
Yeah,
I saw one episode ever.
Yeah, jump on board, get caught up. You're gonna miss a ton of references. People are making reference to it all the time. For me, that's like me. I don't know Star Wars at all, so yeah, I miss a ton of those references. But given that,
yeah, how have you not seen Star Wars? We do need that. That could be a whole nother episode. How you know? Your
brother gives me a hard time about that all the time. But yeah, I've never seen one all the way through, start to finish.
Oh God.
But given that I don't see a lot of traditional episodic television, I think I'd probably vote movies, I guess.
Okay.
I'm not a big culture guy generally, so.
Well, and we didn't talk about this earlier. You have bashed the American version of The Office as well.
I did, yes.
Which,
to be fair, I the reason being is I started watching. I lived in Ireland, Cork, Ireland, for a while, and while there, I was able to see the British Office, and I thought that was hilarious. I thought Ricky Gervais was an absolute genius. So when I came here and I saw the first couple episodes of the American Office, I thought Steve Carell was a bad impersonator of the funny Ricky Gervais character. It wasn't working for me, so I just stopped.
Well, I will say you have Downtown now. The Michael Scott character surpasses. I don't really like Ricky Gervais. I'm going to be honest. I think he's kind of a jerk. There. He's made me laugh once. I think there was an episode he had on Extras with Ben Stiller that I found, and there was maybe like a moment with David Bowie that I found funny.
Extras was hilarious.
But I'm taking Steve Carell all day. All day. Michael Scott.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it is my
episode, right? Do you own every episode? Do you own
I own every episode. I'll let you borrow them. I'll show you how good it really is.
I'm sure you would.
My two shows ever are it's The Office and Sopranos. I'll watch those over and over. But Ricky Gervais, yeah, not a big fan of him.
I think he's hilarious.
I just don't get British humor a lot of the times either.
I think they're really, really funny. I do. I think humor is really, really funny.
Like Monty Python.
I love Monty Python.
Does nothing for me. It does nothing for me. There's a reason that we won the Revolutionary War, and part of it is so we don't have to deal with the British humor. It's not funny to me.
I very much disagree with you on that.
Well, let's just say it's Let Freedom Ring. Okay. Not let's not have tea and crumpets or whatever they do over there. But but anyways, here's the toughest one and the question that I probably won't answer, but I'm going to make you answer it. I'm going to put you in the hot seat. You got to pick Tom Brady or David Ortiz.
Okay, and my answer was and remains, I'm going to go with, even though obviously Brady is ridiculous, I'm going to go with David Ortiz in large part for the reason I referenced earlier. When a region needed him most, I guess, he became much more than just an athlete following. So that would be my answer.
Oh, I think that's a good answer. Hard for me to pick either one. They've done so much for both organizations. Both will have statues outside of their stadiums at some point. I think Ortiz's numbers it's already retired by the Red Sox. What goes against Tom is we're dealing with a virus here, Tom, and a pandemic, and you leave us at our worst. But Tom Brady has made that organization everything that it is.
Yeah, they were really bad when we were younger, for sure.
Well, they were okay. I mean, I think when Kraft bought the team, he started really doing much better. I think Bledsoe was a great pick. They got to the Super Bowl before Brady was there.
Parcells was huge. Yeah.
Parcells was a great coach. What's his name there? Coach Pete Carroll went on. He wasn't ready yet, or maybe they didn't give enough time. But Pete Carroll went on to be a pretty good coach.
Sure.
So
didn't maybe have a lot there though.
He did not. No, but maybe Kraft knows what he's talking about because he has picked some pretty good coaches to coach that team.
To be fair, I just had a flash across my screen in the background. The Patriots are expected to sign Brian Hoyer, so hopefully that gets you excited.
No. It doesn't.
News in real time. There you go.
As a backup?
I have no idea.
Well, whatever. Cool. We'll see what happens. Who knows if there's even a season? We don't even know that right now.
Yeah. You still have to figure out if your brother has officially renamed his son. I think Stidham works really good. That'd be a good way to go.
Well, it's funny, my nephew Brady he's referring to. My sister-in-law still says that he's named after a character from Sex and the City. He ain't going to be telling kids that as he gets older. I'll tell you that straight up. Oh, who are you named after? Are you named after Tom Brady, the best quarterback ever in New England, or are you named after some character that nobody cares about?
No.
He's named after Tom Brady.
I think that's a good move, yeah.
Regardless of that, Jordan or LeBron?
All right, and I think we disagree on this.
Sort of.
I know. Yeah, well, I know you're of the opinion that Jordan was the sidekick to Scottie Pippen during those Chicago Bulls runs.
I love me some Scottie Pippen.
And I don't know if there's ever been a more physically gifted player, talented player than LeBron ever. But to me, I just think just a winner. I don't think anybody's better so far than Jordan. There's nobody I would rather have over him if I was putting together this make-believe team.
Yeah, I think LeBron's a better athlete. I like LeBron because everybody kind of hates him. And I think when he went back to Cleveland, that's where I started being like, I'm going to jump on the LeBron train, I should say, because everyone else wants to hate him. Jordan was the better winner.
Yeah.
I mean,
my LeBron story is I did some college basketball when I was in my undergraduate days, and I was in a media room actually with a scout who was scouting at the time. I went to GW. They were playing Xavier, and so the scout was there to see David West, and so I was talking with the scout about West and all this stuff. He's like, "Yeah, David West is pretty good, but I just saw the best high school junior I've ever seen in my entire life." Or I think he might have said the best high school player I've ever seen in my entire life. And he was talking about LeBron as a junior. So, yeah, people were pretty aware of him early on.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. And I remember, I think some I like for LeBron is we graduated high school at the same time, 2003. I remember watching his games on ESPN. Yeah. Which was pretty unbelievable.
Tell your Jersey friends to get you a St. Vincent St. Mary jersey.
Yeah, I may have to do that. Mac, hook me up. But yeah, I think we're both in agreement that Jordan's really hard to surpass. All right, that brings us to indie wrestling or the world wrestling entertainment.
Sure. Obviously, they offer very different things. I watch more hours a day than more hours a week than a person should of WWE entertainment. I watch a lot. That said, I don't think that there's a whole lot more fun when it comes to sports entertainment than attending an indie wrestling event. I mean, if you imagine the very first time, remember that the very first time I went anyway it wasn't your first time, but my first time at a Limitless event in that tiny place in Portland.
And that was awesome.
It was absolutely going crazy. The place was absolutely nuts. The energy was crazy. I mean, Sean Spears showed up. It was fun.
And he worked the crowd well.
Spears was excellent. Absolutely. Yeah. So that was just that energy is not something you can replicate in a large arena stadium. So,
no, I agree. Because when I asked myself this question in my solo episode, I picked WWE, which I still stand by because I can get so much content from there. However, going to an indie show or going to a WWE show, I'm going to pick the indie show. I think even that night we went to Limitless, WWE was in town and they still packed that house, which tells you people like that small crowd environment. And it's really something you can't really duplicate. And WWE could never get that kind of reaction. So
no, you can't. You won't have that in a giant arena.
It's just not the same.
And with that crowd especially, there's a very real heat that comes. Talk about some people who take that really, really seriously up there. So it made for pretty fun evening.
Oh, I thought people wanted to fight Joey Eastman that night. He had that Mexican wrestling mask on, and he came out of the crowd, and no, it was wonderful. Limitless is a great time. I still will pick WWE, but I do love the independents quite a bit.
Sure.
TNA wrestling. Now I'm talking the 2000s, early 2000s, the first decade or so of TNA. Pretty much under Dixie Carter and the Jarretts or WCW.
Yeah, and I think my answer probably is the incorrect answer in this case, but I just remember, I grew up on WWF when I was a kid, so I was a big Hulkamaniac. Got the WrestleMania with Hogan versus Warrior. That was my birthday gift one year. So I had been a really big wrestling fan following that organization for a long time. So when WCW started really making a name for itself, I kind of went out of my way to avoid it. Like I was almost like, hey, stop picking on the WWE or taking viewers away from the WWF. Sorry, that's my team. That's who. So in a way, I think the WCW, which I think is your answer, is probably put on a better product. But for me, I thought I was intrigued by TNA only because I thought they had a ton of talent there, and we're seeing a lot of them big time now. So.
Yeah, a lot of that talent now is in WWE. Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Bobby Roode, and they're doing great things there. So there was a lot of talent there. I think what killed TNA was people getting into Dixie Carter's ear. And a lot of people have been quoted on saying that, Hogan was as cool it was to have Hulk Hogan, he should never had any, he shouldn't have been behind the scenes. As we could say, I think we talked about this yesterday, was they did that first show on a Monday night and Hogan rolled out Scott Hall and Sean Waltman to start the show. Yeah. They later had the Nasty Boys on the show, who hadn't wrestled in about a decade. Yeah. Wasn't a good time, but an interesting thing that you just said was you said that you kind of picked WWF over WCW back then and felt like, and we're seeing that right now with AEW and WWE fans.
Yes, and I think it's silly. I think in retrospect, I was a dummy for doing so, because I don't see why you just don't. There doesn't have to be an either or. You know what I mean?
No.
You can watch both. I do watch both. Yeah.
Well, you can get content like you never could before. Back then, you had to choose what you're going to watch that night. If you're a grown-ass man and you are getting into arguments over AEW, WWE online, stop. Just stop.
What is that?
All right, that brings us to big Patine fans here.
Yes.
You got to pick Tap House Patine or Chez Vachon.
Yeah, now for me, Chez Vachon is probably always going to be the pick. I'm not going to say always for sure. Who knows? Maybe I'll run up and find an amazing place in Drummondville or something like that. But so far for me, Chez Vachon is the place because it was the first place that puts in on my radar. Like before it became cool to have puts in on your menu, Chez Vachon had puts in on the menu. That was what they were known for. Way before, when you would have walked down the street and asked people about puts in, they would have had zero idea what you were talking about. It was absolutely it was featured on the menu as Chez Vachon. So I very much enjoyed there. They have the traditional fries, gravy, cheese curd, nothing fancy. I mean, you can get stuff on it, but I think it's excellent. So just because I think it was my favorite first, I think is probably why I stick with the Chez.
Yeah, understandable. And I love them both. And
they both really good, for sure.
And I had to put that up there because that's how highly I hold both of those places, that I would put them head to head on this show. As you know, I do my ratings. But
critically acclaimed ratings, in fact.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change it a little bit now that we have the YouTube channel. It might not just be One Bite, Everybody Knows the Rules. That's kind of a ripoff of Dave Portnoy.
Yes.
As much as I love Dave Portnoy through this whole coronavirus thing, I really don't like his takes on it. He's been very ignorant.
I haven't seen it at all. Yeah.
Yeah, Dave. I haven't really liked the takes that he's taken on that. I still really like him, but. Maybe he'll get on board.
Can you order poutine to go? Does that have been dropped off at your house now?
I think you can pick it up. Like I tried to order from the Thirsty Moose, but I think a lot of the problems right now is places don't have enough people because no one answered the phone.
Oh, okay.
I called and no one answered the phone, and when I called the Garden yesterday, because I'm going to be supporting the Garden throughout this because I have loved the Nashua Garden since I was 15 years old.
You're going to spend lots of there. Yes.
Yeah. We got to help them. Got to help them all if we can.
Sure.
But yeah, I called Thirsty Moose and I was trying to get a poutine on Friday and they weren't answering. I don't think that was anything deliberate. I think that they probably just don't have the people.
You don't think they knew it was you calling? Yeah.
Well, maybe they saw my review and were like, yeah, he gave us a 4.
Yeah, that's probably it.
But last blank versus blank, the big one. Yes. We always save the best for last. Tim Bollier. Or the handsome host of Let Freedom Ring, Dan Bollier.
Yes. And Tim, your bro, is obviously we talked about poutine, so I guess that's the segue. He's the one who came up with and is the man behind and still drives the New Hampshire Poutine Fest. But even aside from that, he's absolutely one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. But I think the answer has to do with the fact that the story I tell every time I'm asked about it, and I've given interviews about the podcast a few times now, I guess. I've done presentations about the podcast, and every time I'm asked, how they end up running a French-Canadian themed podcast. I always tell the story, and it always begins with a conversation that you and I had, a very fortunate conversation for me, at the water cooler at work, where we were discussing randomly one day how there's going to be some kind of Irish event going on in Manchester. And I kind of got on my soapbox, and I figured you were French-Canadian heritage by the last name. So I got to go on my soapbox and kind of went off about how we needed to do a better job telling our story. And at the end of my rant, you said, you got to talk to my brother, Tim. So you put me in touch with Tim, which led to me volunteering at the Poutine Fest, which led me to become a member of the board of trustees at the Franco-American Center, and which ultimately led to this podcast, which is going to probably, hopefully, lead to me spending 6 months in Quebec City. So because one conversation with Dan Beaulieu has legitimately changed the entire trajectory of my life, I think you get the edge.
I'll take it by a hair. I think that you two together, that's a good combination because you guys are both very intelligent guys. And I know you guys are doing a lot for the Franco-American. I say center. It's not center.
Is it center?
Yeah. Okay. Just Franco-American Center.
Spelled the French way. That's all.
Yeah. But I know you guys both do a lot for that, which is fantastic. And it's funny because I think that we became friends. Was it Tom Pratt? I just said I liked wrestling, and he said, you need to meet Jesse.
Yeah, well, what happened was when you start at SNHU, where we both work, they used to have, for new people that come aboard, you would have like a little bio.
That's right, yes.
That you would have where you describe yourself. And in your bio, and to be fair, I didn't even read them, but in your bio, you wrote that you were a giant wrestling fan. And that's why you said one of our fellow coworkers, Tom Pratt, was like, you think you're a wrestling fan? You got to talk to this guy, Jesse, who's a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
So that's how that.
Yeah, that was, because you never know. I mean, honestly, that's it. The rest is history. It's funny how life works sometimes.
That's true. Yeah. If you had not put in your bio that you were a giant wrestling fan, I would not be going to Quebec City for 6 months. That's entirely possible.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, life is weird. But no, Jesse, I appreciate you coming on the show. I do apologize for the audio yesterday.
No problem.
Just for everybody watching this, we did record this yesterday. We are trying to figure out alternatives. I literally started the show only a couple of weeks ago. Had no idea the coronavirus would actually have an impact, and I can't get in the studio anymore. Yes. I'd like to see the show continue because I'd like to do this for a long time. I actually really enjoy interviewing people. So I hope Let Freedom Ring Nation enjoyed this episode. And I hope everybody is safe and taking care. And let's all do our part, and let's get through this as fast as possible. Jesse, I'd like to thank you one more time for coming on.
Appreciate the invite, sir.
You are welcome anytime that you'd like to come on. And hopefully you're in Quebec soon, and the studio is open for me.
There you go.
All right, brother.
Have a good one.
I appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. All right.